This entity has a unique mechanic that isn't just a basic rebounder. Most entities usually just rebound, but this entity has its own original mechanic. This entity is one of few to have particles emitting behind it. Most entities are plain and are just an image, but this entity is different and releases particles. This entity doesn't have a specific speed and varies from slow to fast. E16 and V27 are both similar to this entity because they all don't have a set speed. This was the only entity that could kill you even if you had the Locker Immortality glitch. The Locker Immortality glitch was a glitch where you can literally become invincible for the whole game. This glitch was patched, but before it was patched, this entity was the only one who could kill you even if you had the glitch. This is one of the only entities that can have multiple of its spawn besides A278's clones. This is an example where it shows two of these entities that spawn in the same room. The answer was Noah. This entity is a variant. Some entities have a variant which is basically a more dangerous and effective version of itself. Variants are spawned randomly and replaces the entity which they are related to. This entity is not an X variant though, which is the most common variant in the entire game. This entity does not one-shot you. Usually most entities would just one-shot you whenever you come in contact with it, but this entity only damages you. This entity has a tracking mechanic. Usually entities just rush in a straight line, but this entity tracks your movements. This entity's speed also varies like Noah, with 50 to 100 studs per second. This entity's variant name is related to its mechanic. For example, if your entity's mechanic was like killing someone, it would be named KL1 or something like that. I don't know. The answer was DG1. This entity was removed. This entity was originally in the game but got removed in the Entity Extravaganza update. This entity had a mechanic where it just rebounds over and over again. It was not unique and it was just a basic rebounder. This entity was replaced by another entity after its removal. They both have a similar appearance, but they have a very different mechanic. This used to be the fastest entity in the entire game before the Entity Extravaganza update. A183 is now the fastest entity in the entire game, beating this entity. This entity's speed also varies just like Noah, with 1,200 studs to 2,115 studs per second. This entity holds the record for having the most rebounds in its mechanic, rebounding 12 to 20 times when it spawns. The answer was A221. This entity is basically just a generic locker checker. It goes to the current room and checks off the lockers before leaving to the lobby. Before the Entity Extravaganza update, this entity used to have a mechanic where it rebounds over and over again before despawning. It was changed fortunately because this mechanic was not original. This entity is one of the only entities that can fling lockers after A245 broke them off. This is a glitch that only entities can check lockers can do. This entity has a similar design to A60, where it has multiple faces and switches between them. This entity is one of few that can be spawned by A300. The entities that A300 spawns always has to be under 300 rooms, which means only a few amount of entities can fit into this category. This entity has 8 non-canon family members. The answer was A100. This entity is one of few to have a mechanic where it doesn't move. Most entities move around the whole map, but this entity stays still in the room it spawned. This entity is one of few that can't kill people. Most entities can just kill people in an instant, but this entity cannot. This is the only other entity that can have multiple spawned in the same room besides Noah. Most entities cannot spawn multiple of itself, but this entity can. This entity helps other entities kill people. Instead of just killing the player directly, this entity assists other entities to kill people. That's why it probably has the most unique mechanic in the entire game. This is the first stationary entity to be added to the game. This means that this is the first entity that can't move that is added to the game. This entity is one of a kind. This is the only entity that can change colors in the game. The answer was A60.
Yippee! Okay.